Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Jedi In Exile. We are here again. It's Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 3, Chapter 19, The Convert. So much to unpack here. Two main storylines. We've got Din and Bo at the start, Din and Bo at the end, sandwiched with Dr. Pershing and the female from Gideon's unit. So much to unpack with this, so let's get straight into it. Talk me through your initial thoughts.
So, I finished watching this one and felt a little bit underwhelmed.
Oh, don't say it.
Felt a little bit underwhelmed, but I only felt a little bit underwhelmed by the middle bit. I felt like the episode was structured a bit strangely, and I wonder whether that's maybe why I feel a bit underwhelmed. I don't think it's actually anything to do with the content. I think if we had I kind of feel like what they should have done here is not given us the length of episode that they gave us and just had this whole episode be Dr. Pershing.
Because it was a rather longer episode.
It was just a bit weird to kind of be like, here's 5 minutes at the start, then here's a completely different story, and then here's 5 minutes at the end, rather than just bolting on what happened to Din at the end of last episode, or packaging all of this stuff into the next episode. Now, there may be a reason why they've done that, and that may become apparent kind of later in the season.
Yeah.
But that to me just felt very strange.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I thought the cold open with Din and Bo and that whole, the battle scene, I think that was, phenomenal. The fact that, again, there's no preamble to anything, we're just getting straight into it all. So let's obviously start from the beginning. So we get the cold open. Basically, we pick off exactly where the episode 2 finished. So Bo has pulled Din out of the waters,
the magical waters, or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Mystical waters.
Yeah. What I found interesting though straight away is Bo is asking Din about what happened, what did you see down there?
Did you see anything?
And she doesn't tell Din that she saw
the mythosaur.
And I'm a bit like, for me, in my mind, there's one of two reasons why she's done that. She either doesn't trust that she's seen it herself. She's like, well, maybe I was just seeing things, trick of the light, whatever. Or she's thinking, I don't trust Din with that information.
Yeah.
I don't understand why she would hide that from him. Maybe she might be thinking, I don't want to look the fool because it's a mythical beast. Now, clearly, they're talking about when the purge happened. That's obviously must have opened everything up, because the way Din was explaining, and we have to remember he's not been there, but they were never that deep. He could literally it's like walking into the sea, isn't it? It gradually slopes down. So I thought that was interesting. There's a weird dynamic between the both of them, isn't there? I also found it quite interesting that when they're back on the ship, and Bo is talking to Din about, you've bathed in the waters now, you're back in the creed, and he says this is the way. She also says this is the way, which I don't think she said in previous
No, she hasn't.
episodes, and it really felt, and this episode as a whole, in terms of the kind of 10-15 minutes we see of Bo, it's almost like, is she now going to be part of Death Watch as such? Is she going to be part of that clan? Because she's got no one left now. Everyone's deserted her because she didn't have the Darksaber. And then you've got the fact that her castle's been destroyed. Is she now going to want to be part of, the clan and the tribe of Mandalorian? So I thought that was quite weird. And I thought something quite funny was that Grogu then tried to say it and was like, ugh. So that was
the thing that
cool
the thing that I liked about this was the fact that she clearly she's lost all of her family, right? And she's lost all of her followers. And when we were introduced to her initially, she had at least 2 people that were kind of pretty close to her and all of that kind of stuff. And the fact that she did kind of assimilate immediately, having shown such contempt really for the Children of the Watch and the kind of creed that they follow, that maybe this is her kind of feeling like she's part of something
belonging
again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fact that probably she's been raised on the thought of Death Watch being terrorists, she's then met one of them in Din and actually thought, well, he's just like me, he's, apart from the fact that he won't take his helmet off, they're actually really no different to each other, are they? So I thought that was cool. I like the banter between them both. I like the, I don't know whether it's going to lead to something romantically.
So I would love to. I would love to see it, right? And I'm in two minds about this because I don't feel like absolutely every single main character female-male relationship within Star Wars needs to necessarily be about a romantic relationship.
Yeah, of course.
But just think about what that would mean, because her family ruled Mandalore for ages. He currently is the rightful owner of the Darksaber, and so the rightful Mandalore.
Yeah.
So I would love for them to have this kind of semi-fairy tale ending.
The Prince and Princess.
But genuinely, like this kind of fairy tale
promised.
ending of them kind of ending up reuniting the Mandalorians and kind of ruling them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we get to the battle scene, something that always makes me laugh, and I get why they've done it. They did the same in Andor. We saw it in Rogue One, and this as well. The technology on these ships is so like 70s, 80s technology from us, because obviously when the original trilogy was made, you see like in A New Hope when they're getting up their Death Star plans, it's so like 1 pixel, like, and so it just makes me laugh when Din's looking at his like radar, when he's looking
just
at
like the red dots and
it's just so like, and it's just obviously because they're trying to
replicate
and replicate obviously the original trilogy period, whereas you're thinking like Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, everything's so like forward, it's so futuristic. However, speaking of futuristic, we see Coruscant, which is again, for a prequel lover, I'm like, we're back.
So I saw that we were going to get Coruscant. They do little teasers, don't they, before each episode?
Yeah.
And I saw that we were going to get Coruscant, and evidently this is it's the planet, it's the flavour of the month for new material that's being released, because obviously we got to go there in the Bad Batch, and we're back there in this.
It's Filoni's world.
We're
all just living in it.
But the thing that, again, I enjoyed this because we got to see a character who we had seen a small amount of in the previous few series, kind of have a little bit of focus and learn a bit more about him. But I feel like the whole thing was a little bit of a misdirection based on the ending, and we'll come to that when we get to it. But it's just interesting. This, for me, follows the theme that we have talked about before, that these shows are starting to go somewhere that shows how real life works, in regards to, there's been this massive regime out in the galaxy that has fallen. What do we do with all of the people that were part of that?
Yeah, well, I think that's where obviously the amnesty program, it's again, we keep, like you've just said, and like we've spoke about on Andor, and a little bit with the Bad Batch, with seeing the Senate and the bills that go through, like, we're now getting into the realms of the practicalities of the storyline. So the political side of things, the New Republic has taken over, but like you say, there were people who weren't necessarily bad people, but were part of the Empire. And how do you determine between the people who should go to jail and the people who actually did bad things, but with right intentions?
Yes.
And that's what I got that later on in the episode when the Doctor, and I don't know her name, I didn't actually look it up, but we'll call it Doctor and Gideon's assistant.
She did introduce herself, didn't she? At the very end.
He's L52, and I can't remember
G
what
something.
Yeah.
I think.
So they're talking, and she says about how she trained at the academy on Coruscant, how she thought she was doing, the right thing. And I suppose the way the Empire's propaganda would have worked, especially on the core worlds, is that we're doing this to keep you safe. The Outer Rim's a bad place. There's loads of criminals. Blah blah blah. we're trying to keep everybody safe and bring order to the galaxy, especially after having a massive war between the entire galaxy and the Clone Wars. So the amnesty program for me was really interesting, and especially obviously with the whole mind technology, like maybe trying to blast people's memories out from them, or basically reset them. So yeah, I found that whole. I mean, we saw a little bit of that in Andor, didn't we? Where they've used a lot of the brain techniques, like they show.
It was the screams and the cries.
Yeah. So almost like VR.
Yeah.
Basically, and it's a similar kind of thing in this episode. So that's definitely a theme that seems to be throughout. We've got to say, I mean, there's so much to touch on in this period in the middle, because it does feel like such a long episode. Like, I think because we weren't going backwards and forwards between Din and Bo.
It was actually a longer episode as well.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was 59 minutes, it said. I think it was about 54, 55 minutes of runtime. But it really did feel like such a longer episode. So, I have to say, though, as soon as we saw Gideon's assistant, the lackey, straight away I was like, she's not.
Well, she was just a bit dodgy with certain things, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Where every now and then you kind of caught that like little bit where the smile maybe faded. Like the acting was unreal.
Yeah.
Because
really
it was genuinely that whole like that thing of how you imagine when somebody is putting on a front and having a bit of a facade, where it's that the second that somebody's back turns and they get that tiny reprieve, it fades for a split second and then comes back. So I thought that was really clever, and I was like you, I kind of went, there's something not right here.
Yeah, so obviously the Doctor, we're introduced to him, he's in he's doing a speech, isn't he, to all the rich people of Coruscant, and he keeps touching his ear, doesn't he, at various points of the episode, and like tugging at it and whatever. And I noticed he's got a little bit of his
earpiece when he was giving the speech, but then the fact that he kept doing it.
Yeah, well, as well, the ear he kept touching had like a chunk missing from it. So, and I don't know whether that was to do with, he talks about his mum being ill in the speech. I don't know whether maybe he had something ill that he'd maybe cured, or I feel like there's a bit more to that. What struck me in those scenes though were that to the rich people of Coruscant, the guy gets confused between the Empire and the New Republic. To the people in the core worlds, and I don't just include Coruscant in this, life probably isn't that much different having the Empire in control, or having the New Republic, or having the Old Republic.
Banks will still be making money. Like it'll be.
Yeah, it's that class of people. I don't think, and that I think speaks to a wider part of like society. I just think that's where our society is kind of mirrored in fiction, in Star Wars. So I found that was a really good. It was a really good scene, even though it was only a couple of minutes long. We saw a Mon Calamarian, so it just brings back Akbar, and then we see obviously one later on that we'll talk about with the famous line. And I have to say that the job then so we kind of skip ahead. This Doctor is in the amnesty program. He's given a job like cataloguing old Imperial assets as such, and it's very reminiscent of from Andor, the guy,
Cyril's
the officer,
job.
Cyril. Yeah, so his job, he's an archiver, isn't he? And again, there's that kind of mirror that the New Republic and the Empire are almost like two sides of the same coin.
So I think this was interesting from two perspectives. That, and also the fact that both of them were put into like a menial job that was far below their skill set.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And you can tell that's where the mundaneness of it all, knowing that he's destined to help more, because the way they're having this come across is that he's like the only one, like the only cloner left. He's learned the Kaminoan way, he's expanded on it. Again, it's interesting to have this episode, and we've had some Bad Batch episodes of the cloners after the Clone Wars. It's almost like Filoni is part of both these projects.
and steering them both in the same sort of direction.
Even though they're 20 years... they're not 20 years apart. Even though, I mean, what's the Mandalorian into the Bad Batch? Probably like It's
going to be significant, isn't it? Because Bad Batch is...
It's going to be about 4...
Bad Batch is before A New Hope, and this is set...
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be around the 30 years mark, I would think, that this is now around. So,
who knows what's been happening with cloning in the background.
Exactly. There's some parallels to this. I thought the when they go walking out in Coruscant, and again, something really weird, but we know Coruscant as, like, skyscrapers. You've got different levels. We saw a lot of that in Clone Wars with Ahsoka meeting the two sisters who were in, like, the lower levels of Coruscant, but you never see, like, a ground level. But we see this mountain.
Yeah, so I feel like with Coruscant, we tend to see... I know that there are some bits that are the upper class that we get to see, like when they go to the opera and stuff, but they tend to only be little snippets. Everything else we've seen of Coruscant seems to be like the gritty kind of underworld of Coruscant. So yeah, the rock thing was quite cool to kind of...
It was just something it doesn't... I don't think it really adds to the storyline at all. I don't think they've put it in there as like an Easter egg or something that's going to...
it's world building.
But it is world building, and it's just something that actually that's quite cool that Coruscant has got, like, in theory, mountains.
Well, it's also that thing of... We get the impression that because they've turned their whole planet into a city...
Well, there's a trillion people on this, they say, don't they?
That because they've turned the whole planet into a city, we get the impression that is because it was the whole, like, well, we don't value nature and we don't value the planet. We just need, like, all of the facilities.
Well, they have
so
a fake sun, don't they? They have a mirror that, like, so it replicates day and night.
So the whole point that they actually make a big thing about this mountain and the fact that, you know, I thought that was quite cool to kind of show, well, actually it's a little bit deeper than just we need the space, so we're going to turn this planet into a massive city.
Definitely. I liked it was something, a little small bit that made me laugh, but when Gideon's assistant is talking about being at the academy and how things haven't changed that much, he said, but the cogwheels have been taken down. And the cogwheel I took to mean, like, the logo of the Empire. Yeah. Which I just thought that was a really just funny way of describing, like, obviously the Empire's logo would have been, like, everywhere. So I thought that was just quite a cool... And again, it's just one line, but you're just thinking, like, maybe that's what people genuinely called it. And she was obviously part of the Empire. So, yeah, no, I found that quite interesting. Again, another line... when they're on the train, they've got this thing.
Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's so New York subway, isn't it? Like, and obviously that's the vibe they're going for, because there's this great, like, hairy, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's supposed to be like semi-intimidating.
Yeah, that's like standing there, and she says it obviously, and she like blends in. He then says it a few minutes later, and just looks like an absolute wally. Like, he just.
That's so fun, but that again shows you it's the personality types, isn't it? He is quite clearly socially awkward.
Yeah, well,
and so he doesn't know how to like interact in that. I think the scene on the train was cool, but slightly anticlimactic to me.
I agree,
but we then immediately obviously moved on to the abandoned Star Destroyer.
With no security whatsoever.
Yeah, I kind of get, like, my thing...
clearly we know afterwards that it's a trap, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the whole point.
I still feel like... Yeah, I found that quite... I was thinking from his point of view, you'd be thinking...
But maybe that's what the whole, like, him saying the...
Yeah, well, he trusts her, doesn't he?
He trusts her, and he literally has no... kind of social skills, social knowledge,
no awareness, does he? No, and I get that, but it was just a little bit like, come on.
The thing that was cool with that was just seeing, kind of, it's interesting to see the scale of a Star Destroyer on Coruscant. It looked tiny in the dock, and then obviously they went on. It was a little bit like a horror movie initially.
Yeah, again, I mean, obviously they got their torches out. Later on, they're then running with their torches through the dark. It's almost like we're over here.
I was sat there going, why are you not turning your torch? You're out of the little bit, and something's chasing you. You're advertising where you are.
That really did strike me.
But the big old beautiful Easter egg for a lot of the original trilogy fans.
Yeah.
The old rebel uniforms with the big old hats.
Yeah, I know. It was really because that's the Alderaan uniform, isn't it? So I know obviously the Rebel Alliance takes that on because Bail Organa gives his army, doesn't he, to the Rebel Alliance, and they kind of take that on.
It's slightly the reverse, different, like, but it's the hat. The helmet,
and I was just like,
helmet.
It's so clean. It's like a powder blue, the black and white helmet.
They love it.
It's just. I mean, it reminded me of Rogue One, to be fair, when they're all running for their lives from Vader. But no, that was just so cool to like that being harked back. And you know what? This episode, and I kind of knew it wasn't going to happen because we're only on episode 3, but I almost felt like, was this our moment? And it might happen later on, but you know when we had like Luke came at the end of Mando season 2, I was thinking, are we going to see Leia? And I know obviously Carrie Fisher isn't around anymore.
But with the CGI,
but with all that,
stuff,
and I wondered whether we'd see even like a hologram of her speaking, because clearly she's part of forming the New Republic. So I wondered whether we'd get something in Coruscant.
Let's wait and see.
So yeah, that's not a prediction. I'm just saying that was as soon as I saw Coruscant, I was like, oh my god, we might see Leia.
And while we're on the whole like original trilogy stuff, we can't not talk about the not so subtle nod to the original trilogy. Hilarious that the roles have been reversed in this one. So when the Mon Calamari's like dealing with the
electric pulses,
the mind
like,
control or the mind machine or whatever it is.
The flare,
the it's a trap comment was
like, and
it's
the way
beautiful.
It was brilliant because it wasn't like a big like in your face like it's a trap. He's like, you know, the way he says it and the actual line is. Yeah, it was Chef's Kiss. It really was.
That was a writer. That was a writer
that
wrote that in and then sat for about 4 hours, absolutely wetting themselves.
You'll have the writers have probably got a board of like Star Wars quotes they need to put in somewhere.
How do you shoehorn this?
And then they're like, oh, this is the perfect moment, and take it off the board, put it in there. Like it was absolutely brilliant.
And then obviously we got the big kind of further reveal. So initially I was kind of like, oh, maybe she is actually fully helping the New Republic and she knows that this is like her trying to weed out anybody that would turn quickly to help protect the New Republic. And then we got the moment of turning the dial up.
Well, I think the reason, well, not the reason, I kind of had an inkling straight away that she wouldn't have turned from Gideon, but when he first comes into the amnesty
he spots
yard,
her, doesn't he?
He spots her, they're talking, and they say about the rumour that Gideon's managed to escape the New Republic. So, but then they say, oh no, that's just a rumour, I've heard something else. Like, she's clearly been planted there by Gideon, and it's almost a case of he knows too much about maybe what their plans were, because especially the speech he made about getting DNA fragments from 2 donors to increase them. That's got to be something.
She was there, wasn't she?
Yeah, and that's got to be something to do with the Force. So obviously they were using Grogu, trying to take maybe blood and DNA from him to then implant maybe into someone like a Gideon, say for instance, or whoever else, to create Force users,
super
to create a new load of super soldiers, Inquisitors, all of that. There's a lot of little snippets from this episode that I feel are going to reveal a bigger picture.
Yeah, and she's definitely doing something to help Gideon here, and I think
she just loves her bread.
Oh, the biscuits.
Yeah,
the travel biscuits.
Yeah, I was like, oh, she's badass. Like she just turns up and then takes a bite out. I was like, oh, that is quite badass.
So let's roll the episode round to.
Because we don't know. I mean, we leave him being turned up to the max. I wonder whether he'll now will be part of this going forward. Like, I don't know how he's going to react from it. I almost feel like as well that didn't the Mon Calamari said, "Oh, I'll be right here," or he said like,
"Yeah," but I think that's like when you go in for like an operation and they're like, "I'll be right here."
Yeah, well, I wonder how long it's going to be, and then the other guy, obviously the commissioner, was like, "Oh, you've done this," and
so this was the point that I was alluding to earlier in the episode is that I wonder whether this is Dr. Pershing's story over, and this whole episode was a bit of a red herring.
Yeah.
That we were following him, but this was actually setting up her as the character, not him. And actually, we're now, like, so she will now make a return somewhere else. And this whole thing was like, oh yeah, we're following Dr. Pershing. Of course we are, because of what happened before. But actually, the episode was supposed to be more about her.
Well, yeah, I feel like the whole comment about Gideon follows on from when we see Bo's castle destroyed. So she makes a comment as well when they're in space, like, this is too many, like, TIE interceptors for an Imperial warlord, which makes you think it's a whole division, which makes you think it's a Grand Moff. Now, is that going to be a Gideon? Is that going to be a Thrawn? Like, there's different options. Are we going to be introduced to someone else? I think it's going to be Gideon, because we know the actor is in this series, so clearly there's something there. I think just on that point as well, actually, I forgot to mention it earlier, when Bo's castle is destroyed, even though we can't see her face, you feel the anguish through the helmet.
Yeah, you do.
Like, you get the intake of breath and like, oh no. But then the camera's focused solely, and I have to say, the music in this episode, I don't remember the music in season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian being that noteworthy. It was very much slow, because he was in the desert a lot of the time, or on these missions, like, wherever. The music was all quite slow. The music in the first 3 episodes of this has been, like, in your face, like, boom, boom, boom. Just absolutely brilliant.
I think it was class. And while we're talking about them, let's bring the episode
so
around.
That's how, obviously, the last sort of 5-10 minutes
we then roll in back into them, and we roll into her and Din rocking up at the enclave.
Yeah.
And going
where
in.
They always have their portable, like, equipment.
Yeah.
The armourer's oh no, we've got to flee this place, but we better not forget the
and also, I just so happen to have a magic vat of water that can test whether these waters are legit
the
or
waters
not.
that no one can ever get to, because Mandalore is cursed and poisonous. But just in case, we'll have the fountain set up.
We can check.
Yeah,
but no, like, obviously we got a few interesting interactions. Paz Vizsla again being an absolute douche. No, because I think he thinks that he should be the one.
Yeah, because of his descendant.
So obviously that was interesting, and we'll get to see where that goes. We didn't get tons from that, other than clearly he's not happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole, like we talked about it at the beginning, the whole kind of like Bo now having a clan. I also really enjoyed. So when they were like, you're one of us because you haven't removed your helmet since you did it, and blah, 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 blah. I then really enjoyed the thing where I was expecting the armourer to then kind of be like, however, if you join us, you join us.
Yeah.
And she's actually like, you can leave whenever, like...
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like this is our way, but you might have your own way. You do you, hun. But I liked it how all the other clan members came up to her and were almost like congratulating her, and obviously they congratulated Din, and I quite liked that obviously it's that sense of belonging again, like we said earlier. You almost feel like she's home, even though the Clone Wars has taught us that these are terrorists,
but she's back with her own people, in that she's back with Mandalorians.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see where her story goes. Clearly she's going to be a big part of the series, whether she travels with Din to wherever, or what she's doing, like, who knows. Now, his great quest was to get to Mandalore, was to bathe in the waters. He's done that, and we're on episode 3.
It's going to be pulling the clans back, isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder whether they all then go to Mandalore, or what happens. So yeah, it'll be an interesting time.
Yeah, I think this was as I said, it was a solid episode. I felt weird about the setup, and that's maybe why I felt underwhelmed, because it felt like there was this big story about Dr. Pershing, and then kind of it went away, and it just felt weird being bookended with the Din and Bo story. But still, absolutely loved it. You know me, I'm always going to love it. If you guys have enjoyed hearing us talk about that, then why don't you go check out some of our other awesome content available right here. And other than that, guys, we'll see you all really soon in the next one.
This is the way, and may the Force be with you.